When the Pinecrest HOA president welded my ranch gate shut at 3 in the morning, I didn't just lose access to my property. I lost faith in humanity. What they didn't know, I'm a civil engineer who specializes in easements and property law, and I'd just inherited enough money to buy the abandoned logging road they'd been illegally using for their fancy landscaping trucks for years. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, because you'll want to stick around for when I installed the automated toll booth and started charging them $750 per vehicle. By the end of this story, their precious community guidelines became their worst nightmare. I never wanted to be the guy at war with an HOA. My grandfather raised me better than that, always saying that good neighbors are worth more than gold. But when I found my ranch gate welded shut with a metal plate bolted across it and a laminated notice of violation flapping in the morning breeze, I knew peaceful coexistence wasn't in the cards. Let me back up. My name is Baron Drake, and until 6 months ago, I was living in Seattle, working as a civil engineer specializing in municipal infrastructure and property law. When my grandfather passed away, he left me his 35-acre ranch that bordered Pinecrest Estates, an upscale housing development that had sprung up about 15 years ago. Grandpa's land had been in our family for generations, and when the developers came calling in the early 2000s, he negotiated limited access through a small section of his property for their original construction. He was a reasonable man, the kind who believed in working together. The morning I had discovered the welded gate, I was supposed to be meeting with contractors about renovating the old ranch house. Instead, I found myself staring at what could only be described as an act of trespassing, vandalism, and, frankly, a bizarre power move. The notice, printed on premium cardstock with an embossed Pinecrest Estates logo, informed me that my property had been incorporated into the Pinecrest HOA jurisdiction following county rezoning, and that my non-conforming gate and fence line were now subject to community standards. I laughed out loud. There had been no rezoning. My grandfather's property wasn't part of their development. Someone was bluffing badly, and they had picked the wrong guy to try it on. Standing there in the chilly morning air, I called the number on the notice. A woman with a voice like artificial sweetener answered. "Pinecrest Estates Management Office. How may I direct your call?" "This is Baron Drake, owner of the property adjacent to your development. Someone has vandalized my gate and left a fraudulent notice. I'd like to speak to whoever's responsible." After being placed on hold for what felt like an eternity, a different voice came on the line. Honeys, but with barbs underneath. "This is Keisha Vance, president of the Pinecrest HOA. I understand you're confused about the recent changes, Mr. Drake." "There are no recent changes, Ms. Vance. My property is not part of your HOA, never has been, and your people have committed criminal trespass and vandalism. I need this gate functional within the hour, or I'm calling the sheriff." Her laugh had the warmth of January in Alaska. "Mr. Drake, perhaps you haven't been properly informed. The county commissioners approved a rezoning petition last month that incorporated outlying properties into our development zone. Your rustic fence line violates at least 6 of our community standards. We've simply taken the initiative to begin enforcement." I felt my blood pressure rising, but kept my voice level. "I'll need to see documentation of this supposed rezoning. In the meantime, I have contractors arriving who need access to my property. I'll have our management office email you the relevant documents. As for your contractors, they'll need to apply for work permits through our Architectural Review Committee. The application fee is $500, and the review process takes approximately 3 weeks. I ended the call before saying something I'd regret. Using bolt cutters from my truck, I cut through their welding job, which took nearly an hour and left me sweating despite the cool morning. While working, I noticed a white SUV parked just inside the development entrance watching me. When I finally got the gate open, the SUV drove away. Later that day, while showing the contractors around the property, I met my first ally. A woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun approached across the field that separated the ranch from the nearest Pinecrest homes. "You must be Carl's grandson," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Lonnie Wells." "I was friends with your grandfather for years. Been watching that HOA bunch giving you trouble this morning." I shook her hand, noticing the shrewd intelligence in her eyes. "Baron Drake, pleasure to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances." Lonnie glanced at my mutilated gate. "I saw what they did. That's Keisha and her cronies all over. Act first, make up rules later. I was a paralegal for 40 years before retiring. Those people have been trying to get their hands on this property since your grandfather got sick." We spoke for nearly an hour. Lonnie explained that she'd been documenting the HOA's increasingly aggressive tactics, attending every meeting and recording everything legally possible. According to her, Keisha Vance had transformed from an ordinary board member to a power-hungry president over the past 2 years, surrounding herself with like-minded board members who rubber-stamped her decisions. The latest rumor is they want to build a second family had their permission to build a fence revoked mid-construction, leaving them with unusable materials and a $1,000 restoration fee. The pattern was clear. Keisha wielded the HOA's power arbitrarily and punitively against anyone who challenged her vision. "It's not just about control," explained Russell Dawson, a retired judge who had recently moved to Pine Rest. "There's money involved. Keisha's sister owns the landscaping company that has an exclusive contract with the HOA. The architectural review committee that collects all those application fees, her college roommate chairs it. They've raised our dues 30% in 2 years with minimal improvements to show for it." I filed my formal complaint with the county about the gate incident, only to have it mysteriously delayed. Jonathan confirmed my suspicions. Commissioner Harley Green, Keisha's regular golf partner, had flagged the complaint for additional review. Lonnie provided me with recordings from recent HOA meetings where they discussed my property without using my name, referring instead to the adjacent acquisition target and Phase 3 expansion zone. In one recording, Brenda Kemp, another board member and Keisha's right hand, explicitly mentioned leveraging county connections to facilitate the transfer. Meanwhile, Keisha escalated her harassment campaign. Each morning brought new violation notices, each more absurd than the last. My non-conforming agricultural equipment, my grandfather's restored tractor, was visible from community spaces. My decision to cut my own gate open constituted destruction of community enhancement measures. The daily fines now totaled over $4,000. I continued researching the logging road situation, discovering that Western Timber Holdings was in the process of liquidating their regional assets. A call to their corporate office confirmed what I suspected. The 5-acre parcel containing the logging road was available for $800,000. While the price was steep, it represented a perfect strategic acquisition. If I controlled that road, I controlled Pine Rest's back access, the same access they had been using without permission for years, and the same access they needed for tomorrow's big landscaping delivery. I called my financial advisor to arrange the transfer, then had Gabrielle prepare the purchase agreement. By that evening, I had a signed contract, giving me first right of refusal on the property, with closing scheduled in 2 weeks. I would need to move quickly if I wanted to be ready for tomorrow's delivery. That night, I received a formal cease and desist letter from Pine Rest's attorney, a laughably amateur document threatening legal action if I didn't immediately pay all accumulated fines and submit to HOA authority. The letter inadvertently confirmed what I already knew. They had no legal basis for their claims. If they had, they would have simply filed for an injunction. When Lonnie called the next morning, her voice was tight with urgency. "Baron, I just got out of their emergency board meeting. They're planning to begin construction of a second clubhouse, and the plans show it partially on your land. They're acting like they already own it." "How are they justifying that?" I asked, stunned by their audacity. "Yeah, they're not even trying to justify it anymore." Keisha said, and I quote, "That country bumpkin doesn't understand what he's up against. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. They don't know about your background and connections. They think you're just an easy target." As I hung up, I opened my grandfather's nuclear option folder again. Inside was a handwritten note I'd missed before. Sometimes good fences make necessary neighbors, and sometimes you need to show them why the fence was there in the first place. Don't let them take what our family built. I smiled grimly as I learned their landscaping company was scheduled to deliver materials worth $75,000 the next morning, using my road. I realized Grandpa had left me more than just land. He'd left me the perfect opportunity for revenge. With my purchase agreement for the logging road in hand, I worked through the night to prepare. Western Timber's representative had agreed to expedite the process given the all-cash offer, and by morning I had preliminary ownership documents, enough to establish my right to control access even before the final close. At dawn, I drove to the hardware store in town and purchased everything I needed. No trespassing signs, property boundary markers, security cameras, and materials to construct a simple but effective gate at the logging road's entrance. I also picked up several large concrete blocks that could be moved into place quickly if needed. By 9, I had property markers installed along the logging road boundary, and private property, no unauthorized access signs posted every 50 feet. I set up 4 solar-powered security cameras with motion detection and cellular uplink, ensuring I'd have video evidence of any trespassing. The most important preparation, however, was the simple barrier gate I installed at the road's entrance, complete with a large sign reading "Public Road Access Only" and a QR code linking to a payment portal I'd hastily created overnight. As I finished setting up, Russell arrived to witness the operation. "You sure about this, Baron? Keisha doesn't respond well to challenges." "I'm done playing defense," I replied, checking the engineer who specializes in easements and property rights. The emergency HOA meeting Lonnie described proved to be just the beginning of Kesha's counteroffensive. Within 48 hours, every resident of Pine Rest Estates received an urgent community bulletin describing me as a hostile adjacent landowner attempting to extort our community and urging residents to report any suspicious activity around my property. The bulletin conveniently omitted any mention of the Welded Gate incident or their unauthorized use of the logging road. For years, I wasn't particularly bothered by the character assassination until I discovered that several of my contractor appointments had been canceled after receiving concerns about community safety from Pine Rest's management office. It was time to upgrade my response. Over the next week, I transformed the simple gate at the logging road into a sophisticated automated toll booth system. I installed a heavy-duty barrier gate connected to a payment processing terminal, multiple high-definition cameras, and an intercom system. The entire setup was powered by solar panels with battery backup and connected to my home network via a dedicated wireless link. Most importantly, it would generate time-stamped records and receipts for every transaction or attempted unauthorized access. I also installed motion-activated floodlights and additional cameras along the property boundary with Pine Rest. If they were going to monitor me, I would return the favor tenfold. My cousin Jonathan came through with county records showing that Pine Rest had been billing residents for community access road maintenance for years, effectively charging their members for improvements to a road they had no legal right to use. This could potentially expose the HOA to liability for fraud if residents chose to pursue it. The toll booth went operational on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday evening, I had my first incident. A Pine Rest maintenance truck attempting to bypass the gate by driving through the shallow ditch beside it. The cameras captured everything, including the Pine Rest logo on the vehicle door and the driver's frustrated expression when he realized he'd been recorded. I promptly sent an invoice for $750 to the HOA office, along with video evidence and a reminder that the next unauthorized access attempt would result in trespassing charges. Thursday brought the second test of my system, this time in the form of Kesha herself, accompanied by a man she introduced via the intercom as our legal counsel. They demanded access without payment for an inspection of community resources. "I'm happy to accommodate an inspection," I replied through the system. "The access fee remains $750. "This is harassment," Kesha snapped. "We have easement rights through prior use." Prescriptive easements require open, notorious, continuous use with the owner's knowledge for the statutory period. My grandfather documented his objections to your use of this road regularly, as his records show. You have no easement rights. However, you're welcome to file for a judicial determination if you disagree." The lawyer whispered something to Kesha, who glared at the camera before retreating to her vehicle. That night, the real escalation began. Shortly after midnight, my phone alerted me to movement at the toll booth. The night vision cameras showed 3 figures approaching the gate with what appeared to be bolt cutters. I immediately called the sheriff's department and activated the system's audible warning. "Attention! You are attempting to access private property without authorization. You are being recorded, and law enforcement has been notified. Please vacate the premises immediately." The would-be vandals scattered, but not before the cameras captured clear images of their faces, including Brenda Kemp and Kesha's brother-in-law, who ran the landscaping company. The next morning, I filed a police report with video evidence. Deputy Collins seemed less than enthusiastic about pursuing the case, but acknowledged he had no choice given the clarity of the evidence. "Just so you know," he said as he was leaving, "Commissioner Green has been asking questions about you and this property dispute." "I'm not surprised," I replied. "You might want to ask the commissioner about his financial interests in Pine Rest Estates. I understand several recent developments have required unusual exemptions from the County Planning Commission." The deputy's expression told me all I needed to know about the local political landscape. Later that day, Lanny brought news that the landscaping company had refused to continue working on the Pine Rest project, citing access issues and contractual concerns. Rather than find a solution, Kesha had hired her sister's new landscaping company at nearly double the previous rates, with the increased costs passed directly to residents in the form of a special assessment. "People are starting to ask questions," Lanny explained, over coffee on my porch. The initial story about a troublemaking neighbor isn't holding up, especially with these new every approach with unpaid HOA invoices now totaling over $45,000, a fact prominently displayed on my billboard. Lonnie's Truth Committee grew to include nearly 30 residents with their own stories of HOA overreach. Russell arranged a meeting with the County Ethics Committee regarding Commissioner Green's involvement in the emergency access permit, after which the commissioner suddenly became unavailable to Kesha. One evening, while marking boundary lines, Kesha approached me alone, a first. "This has gone far enough," she said. "You're turning our community against itself and damaging property values." "I'm exercising my legal rights," I replied calmly, "something you seemed concerned about when it suited your purposes. What do you want? Money?" She gestured toward the hillside. "This land isn't special, it's just dirt and trees." I faced her directly. "If it's just dirt and trees, why are you so—" And their worst nightmare was about to begin. The morning after finding my gate destroyed, I sat in the sheriff's department with Deputy Collins, watching his expression change from skeptical to stunned as he viewed the security footage. "That's unambiguous," he admitted, rewinding to watch Kesha's face, clearly visible as she directed the vandalism. "We can't ignore this level of evidence. I'm pressing charges," I stated firmly. "Felony vandalism, criminal trespass, and destruction of property. I want arrests made today." The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Drake, you understand this involves prominent community members? There are protocols." "Are you suggesting different laws apply to prominent community members?" I asked, my voice level but firm. Because I'm prepared to send this footage to every news outlet in the state, if that's the case. I'm also prepared to file formal complaints with the state attorney general regarding selective enforcement. He raised his hands in surrender. That won't be necessary. I'll need to consult with the sheriff, but we'll proceed according to the evidence. I wasn't taking chances. As soon as I left the sheriff's office, I sent copies of the footage to Gabrielle, Russell, and most importantly, to a contact at the regional news desk who had expressed interest in the story after noticing my electronic billboard. What happened next exceeded even my expectations. By noon, 2 local news vans were parked outside the sheriff's department. By 2, the state police had arrived, taking over the investigation after concerns about potential conflicts of interest with local law enforcement. By 4, Keisha, Brenda, and their 2 accomplices were being led from their homes in handcuffs, their arrests captured live by news cameras. The arrests were just the beginning. The search warrants executed on their homes and offices revealed a trove of incriminating evidence, financial records showing systematic misappropriation of HOA funds, communications with developers regarding plans for my property that predated my grandfather's death, and most damning of all, explicit discussions about falsifying county documents to force my compliance. What nobody expected was how quickly the investigation expanded. The falsified water quality reports submitted for the emergency access permit triggered an environmental compliance review. This led investigators to discover that Keisha had been cutting corners on required environmental protections for years, including improper disposal of landscaping chemicals in an area dangerously close to the community's actual water supply. Commissioner Green, seeing which way the wind was blowing, hastily recused himself from all matters related to Pinecrest, citing potential appearance of conflicts of interest without admitting any wrongdoing. This didn't save him from being included in the widening investigation when records showed he had received consulting fees from Keisha's son's shell company. After Keisha's arrest, there was a surprising lull in developments. The wheels of justice turned slowly, even with compelling evidence, and I found myself in a strange position, having won the battle, but unsure what victory really meant. The new interim HOA board, led by Russell, approached me about establishing clear property boundaries and access agreements. The vandalized gate was still a pile of twisted metal, and my grandfather's legacy still felt somewhat tarnished by the whole ordeal. I expected to feel satisfaction when the sheriff's department finally acted, but instead felt a hollow uncertainty. Was all this conflict what my grandfather would have wanted? He had always emphasized being a good neighbor, even when it was difficult. The answer came from an unexpected source. During the cleanup of my destroyed gate, nearly 20 Pinecrest residents showed up voluntarily to help. People who had been silent during Keisha's reign, but now felt free to act according to their own values. "Your grandfather helped me install my irrigation system when I first moved here," one older gentleman told me as we worked. "Never asked for anything in return. Said that's just what neighbors do." Others shared similar stories, my grandfather helping during power outages, lending equipment, offering advice on everything from gardening to home repairs. The man they described was exactly the person I remembered, someone who believed in community but also in standing firm on matters of principle. With the residents' help, we had the entrance cleared in a day. Rather than replacing the gate immediately, I left it open as a gesture of goodwill while the new HOA board and I negotiated a formal agreement regarding boundaries and limited access rights. The investigation into Pinecrest's finances revealed years of mismanagement. Keisha had been skimming from various accounts, inflating contracts with vendors owned by friends and family, and using HOA resources for personal projects. The total misappropriation exceeded $300,000, money that should have gone to community improvements and reserves. Meanwhile, I had to decide what to do with the accumulated toll fees from the logging road, now over $60,000. After consideration, I announced that I was donating the entire amount to establish a neighborhood